So the point I am trying to make is less is more. Just be purposeful about what you're giving them. Don't just give them stuff to make sure that they have all this stuff to do. It could be as simple as, and most days in my class, we read a chapter and then I'm going to give them a couple questions to answer based on the chapter. They get into the story and then I can always check for understanding if they were actually able to ask those or answer those questions at the end. But really it can be anything, but just be simple and be purposeful about what you do. So if you're looking at your novel, what other standards or skills or content areas can you bring in and pair with this novel? And it just really depends on what grade level you're at or what novel you're doing. And then also just, with timing of things, it's not like you have to do it all. But I always believe in working smarter, not harder. So if you can find ways to include other skills or other standards, not just the reading of literature standards that I went over with you guys, then you're essentially just giving your students more time to practice with those skills, more exposure to those standards, and then that gets them one step closer to mastery. So some examples of this would be writing. And writing is really easy to pair with reading, so just be mindful of what writing standards would go with which novel you're doing. For example, in The Outsiders, and I actually included that on this slide, in The Outsiders, I did a whole writing workshop while we were reading The Outsiders. We were also working on a skill and writing a race paragraph, going back to that standard of being able to cite text evidence. And so I had them do several pieces of writing throughout our reading, but essentially what it came down to was I was having them practice citing text evidence based on the book that they were reading or the novel that they were reading, and it worked out really well. By the time they were done with the novel study, I knew where they were at when it came to writing a race paragraph or being able to do that other standard. Another example would be reading informational texts. I again put the Phineas Gage example, but really just having them read informational texts that pair with topics throughout the novel is so helpful. And then the last one is cross-curricular activities. So anytime you can bring in another content area, especially as an English teacher, that is something that we have the autonomy to be able to do, and it can be very beneficial for students to see how to use the skills and standards that we need to know in English class or in their ELA class, but also apply it to social studies or also apply it to science or math or whatever it may be. And so just be thinking about when you're planning your novel study, is there something else I can pair with this that will help not only me, but maybe other teachers in the building? Or is there something I can pair with this that is essentially working smarter, not harder? This next part really is just going over engagement and check-ins. I put them together because some of them go hand in hand. So the first couple of questions that you had asked, or that I asked way back when, how can I get and keep my students engaged? And then how can I get them interested in this book or topic? We already went over anticipatory or anticipation activities, but here are some examples as far as engagement goes. You can do debates with your students. You can do class discussion, group work. You can do activities where they continue to work with a high interest level topic. Any of those you can do and keep your students engaged in reading the novel that you're doing with your class. The example that I actually included for this is down in the corner, and my students, my honors class is reading War of the Worlds, and so with that I had them read War of the Worlds, and my regular ELA are going to do a whole unit on Ray Bradbury. So I paired the topics of conspiracy theories and also mass hysteria, which are themes or topics that you find throughout Bradbury's work, but also throughout War of the Worlds. And then each week they essentially do research or they do some activity that's either diving into like a specific conspiracy theory or that's looking at like an event of mass hysteria. And it definitely keeps the kids hooked, and those topics are high interest level for them. They are just a little bit fascinated with it, and it's kind of cool to see even like with War of the Worlds, like aliens taking over the world, talking about like they could not believe, oh, we're actually like talking about if we believe in aliens or not, which was again high engagement, which is what you're looking for. And then check-ins, I just labeled them as check-ins because that's what I call them a lot in my class. Some examples of these are formatives, summatives, and then I also included on their Google Forms because I use Google Forms a lot for check-ins, where I just give them a series of questions that are multiple choice and they answer them, and then it actually grades it for me, so I am able to see if they're understanding the text or not. And mainly for check-ins, I would say that they're formatives, not summatives. Summatives are more towards the end of a novel, but formatives can be anything really. And formatives, I would also like to say, do not have to be graded. They can be as simple as, like some of the examples for engagement. You're having a debate with your students. You structure it and you give them some criteria, and then you monitor them, you observe them, in their debate or in their class discussion, and you can be able to pick up real quick on the kids that are understanding it and the kids that are not. So that's why it's just called check-ins. Some teacher tips that I have for you guys would be, the first one, you do not have to grade everything. I wish somebody would have told me that when I had started teaching, or maybe somebody did and I just didn't realize it, but I have gotten to the point now that I think it's really important to differentiate between practice and performance. So, and I talk to my kids about this a lot. There's several activities that we will do, and I will probably only grade one of them. But all of the other activities are practice. So if kids aren't doing well, then I'll ask them or have them go over their practice activities with me, or assignments, whatever it may be. Because if they can do the practice, then they can do the performance activity. And the performance doesn't have to be anything super big, but I think it's important to note that there's a difference between the two, and you don't have to grade everything. And just like with the formative, some check-ins can literally just be observing kids. Half the time when my kids are reading a novel, what it looks like for me to check in with them is to watch them read with their groups, or to like join a group to read with them, because I want to make sure like a specific group is on task, or that like one of, some of my students, I really want to check in and make sure they're understanding. So it doesn't have to be anything grand. And then lastly, less is more. It's not like you have to do all of these engaging activities. We already talked about like simple is almost better. Just be purposeful about what you're doing. And then I did want to touch on summatives real quick. Summatives are essentially like the end of unit check-ins, or more like assessment types, to see how they did over the whole novel. It is important to know, and I always start off with, this is almost like the first thing I ask myself would be, like, what do I want my students to accomplish at the end of the unit? Which sounds weird to start at the end, but if I know what I expect of them at the end of the unit, then I know how I'm going to do the rest of the unit, or that's how I make my decisions. If I know that at the end of the unit, I really want them to be writing a race paragraph, or I'm going to have them do a writing piece to utilize that skill as well, well, then during that unit, I'm going to have them practicing those skills, and I'm also going to be having them do like activities so that they're ready for that summative assessment. If at the end of the unit, like with the outsiders, at the end of the unit, I actually just had them take like a bigger quiz, and I gave them several questions from throughout the story. Well, I made sure that when we were in the area around those questions, to bring them up or to tie it back so that they had already at least heard those questions or heard that answer more than once, or at least once. My teacher tip for you would be make sure what they do at the end of the novel matches up with what you're doing during, like while you're reading. And some examples are tests, projects, writing assignments, essays, discussions, debates. If you liked or would like to find this presentation or any of the resources mentioned in this video, or even if you want to see what other resources I have put together, go over to TPT and check out the Raining Resources storefront. Every resource that I referenced in this video is on my store or in my store. And then also I did put this presentation in there as well. So if you happen to be a coach, or if you have like a group that you want to go over this stuff with, then you are more than welcome to go over there and find this and use it and modify it in any way. I'm just really hoping that it helps somebody or it helps as many people as possible. And then if you haven't already, make sure to follow me on YouTube, Facebook, and also TPT. And as always, like and share this video.